Megan had always been the straight-A student, the overachiever who seemed to have every detail of her life in perfect order. But then, in her final year of school, everything began to unravel. She lost a close friend in a sudden accident, and for the first time, Megan stared down, a thought she'd never dared approach, that one day, without warning, her life could end too. She found herself lying awake at night, heart pounding, images of dark nothingness swirling behind her eyes. She'd toss and turn, telling herself she was being dramatic, but the anxiety wouldn't quit. As she walked the halls, all she could see were ghosts of her own imagination, dreading this unknowable moment that might come tomorrow or decades later. It felt like a slow, suffocating panic. And the harder she tried to understand what happens when we die, the more questions kept spinning in her head. She read books that hinted at a warm, eternal light. She heard stories suggesting total oblivion. She stumbled across bizarre theories about uploading consciousness to machines, but none of it felt certain. She yearned for a concrete, no-nonsense explanation, a single, straight answer. Yet every answer she found only led to more questions. It felt like falling into an endless chasm, straining to see the bottom, but never even hearing an echo. That's when she realized she'd have to keep going deeper before she could finally come up for air. Most of us, if we're honest, share a piece of Megan's confusion. Death is our species' biggest unknown. We're built to crave certainty, to need a sense of closure. Yet there's no universal agreement on what happens once we take that final breath. Some say our consciousness drifts off to a dreamlike paradise. Others argue that everything, absolutely everything, fades to black. A handful of brave souls talk about strange lights and emotional experiences they felt during near-death episodes, but no matter how persuasive these stories sound, we can't replicate them in some neat laboratory test. It's all intangible, beyond our regular sense of proof. For thousands of years, we've woven narratives about an underworld, a heaven above, or a cyclical rebirth. Yet every tradition carries its own rules and disclaimers, feeding us with both hope and mystery. It's not just religious teachings either. Some scientists insist that once the brain shuts off, that's it, game over. Fade to cosmic silence, no do-over. Meanwhile, philosophers debate whether there's a component to our existence that outlives the body. With every new angle, every new theory, we get a fresh wave of hope or despair, each new concept as unconfirmed as the last. So we stand here in the crosshairs of fascination and dread. On one hand, it's terrifying, the idea of vanishing from the storyline of existence. On the other, there's a strange comfort in the notion that perhaps we go somewhere beyond the chaos of everyday life. It's one of the few topics that can make our daily struggles, bills, deadlines, petty arguments seem insignificant. It forces us to confront the brevity of life and the fragility of everything we take for granted. And that clash of thoughts, that raw emotional turmoil, is what keeps so many of us up at night. Because who wouldn't want to know, once and for all, where this train is headed? Megan, in her search for answers, tried everything. She buried herself in the scientific journals late into the evening, reading about brain waves, neurons, and the final flickers of electrical activity. She found comfort, in a way, in the cold, clinical finality of it. As if once the mind shuts off, there's no capacity left to experience fear. But she couldn't shake the feeling there was something missing, something intangible that purely scientific language didn't address. Some subtle energy or sense of self that might outlast a failing heartbeat. So next, she ventured to the opposite end, reading esoteric and spiritual accounts from cultures across the globe. She devoured stories of reincarnation, souls traveling through realms we can't see, tales of children recalling past lives down to uncanny details. And while some accounts offered hope, they also brought more questions. Could they all be coincidences? Fabricated memories? Wishful thinking fueled by grief? She spoke to her grandmother, who believed firmly that we move on to a better place where our loved ones wait in gentle embrace. To her, the fleeting years on Earth were just a waiting room before stepping into eternal bliss. That idea comforted Megan, but also felt too perfect to confirm. Her grandfather, on the other hand, was the staunch realist. He'd shake his head and tell her, "When you're gone, you're gone. Make the most of life right here, right now." Two people she trusted, two contradictory takes. And so Megan went round in circles, trying to pin down the intangible. She even got in touch with an old college professor who specialized in consciousness studies, hoping an academic perspective might cut through the noise. This professor introduced her to the concept that consciousness might not just be a byproduct of physical processes. It could be fundamental to the universe, more like a field that our brains tap into. If that were true, does consciousness outlive the body? Or does it simply rejoin some cosmic pool, losing any sense of individuality? Yet again, Megan found herself at another crossroad, an elegant theory with no absolute proof. Intriguing, but still leaving that vital piece unanswered. At times, the sheer weight of these ideas made her want to give up. Every step forward felt like wading deeper into a thick fog. She wondered if all these teachings, texts, and testimonies could be illusions, things we tell ourselves to handle the unknown. Maybe we're too afraid to face the silence of nothingness. Or maybe we're too stubborn to accept there might be more than matter and energy. And still, she couldn't let it go. She felt that pull to find something definitive, because she was tired of anxiety creeping in whenever a headline reminded her of human fragility. She wanted genuine peace of mind. It was only when Megan decided to look inward, to examine her fears one layer at a time, that she began to notice a shift. She realized there's a bigger dimension to our question, what happens when we die? And it connects directly to how we live right now. The biggest secret might not be about describing the great beyond like a travel brochure, but rather understanding the deeper reason this question rattles our souls in the first place. At first, that might sound like a cop-out. Isn't the question about a literal afterlife? Yes or no? But here's where it gets real. We're not just seeking the details of a potential next world. We're also searching for significance in this one. When we ask, what happens when we die? We're simultaneously asking, what is the value of my life? Think about it. If we believed our existence was just an accidental glitch in the universe, flicking off into oblivion, how might that shape our priorities and relationships? And if, on the other hand, we were absolutely convinced in a continued journey after physical death, how might that transform our day-to-day choices? Megan started to test these two mindsets in her life. For a week, she embraced the idea that this life might be all there is. No do-overs, no second act. She found herself savoring her coffee more, stepping outside to breathe in the crisp morning air, choosing to be braver with her time instead of coasting through routines. Strangely, she felt more alive, yet a certain ache remained, a longing for bigger meaning. So, in another week, she acted as if consciousness survived beyond death. She looked at every conversation, every moment, with a sense of cosmic continuity. And what she found was a new reverence for loved ones, for the connections she was forging. Each fleeting moment felt like a stepping stone to an even larger journey. In those small experiments, she touched on a subtle truth. No matter which perspective you gravitate toward, reflecting on death can enrich how you live. Because whether you think everything ends at the grave or extends into infinity, you become more aware of your finite time on this earth. You become bolder about the small joys, more empathetic in your relationships, hungrier for experiences that resonate beyond superficial day-to-day drama. It's as if contemplating death forces us to refocus on life's most pressing, precious details. But there's still the question. Is there a specific answer to what happens? And can we trust any single source? This is where many people hit a wall. You can line up the brightest minds, the most devout gurus, and you'll still find that for every compelling statement, there's a counter-argument or a gap in proof. That might be frustrating. Perhaps it even feels unfair. But if we zoom out, maybe the real power lies in embracing that not knowing, that space of mystery. Because as messy and raw as it is, that uncertainty lights a fire beneath us to make sense of every second we do have. If we had an absolute ironclad blueprint for the afterlife, or the total lack thereof, would that change our day-to-day conduct so drastically? Or would it allow us to slip into complacency, assuming we had all the time in the world or no time at all to make life count? Sometimes it's the tension of the unknown that brings out our deepest creativity, the drive to connect, to love more fiercely, to pursue meaning like it's a lifeline. Now, here's where it gets intriguing. People who've had near-death experiences often report visions of light, overwhelming warmth, and a sense of calm acceptance. They talk about a life review, moments from their past replaying in vivid clarity. Others describe a boundary they were unable to cross before snapping back to life. Science suggests this could be a burst of neural activity as the brain shuts down, a final storm of perception. Spiritual thinkers see it as a glimpse behind the curtain, a revelation that consciousness stretches beyond the physical. Which side is right? The only honest verdict may be that neither side has the ultimate proof. But the stories themselves, the significance they hold, can inspire us to confront our fears rather than hide from them. Here's what Megan discovered, and it took her a while to let it sink in. The biggest secret might not be a tidy fact, but a perspective. We come into this world with a ticking clock. We feel unstoppable in our youth, yet life can turn on a dime. Death remains that final door, locked from the other side. But in that locked door is a key lesson. If we let the uncertainty of death remind us how fleeting and miraculous our existence is, we might stop sleepwalking and start living. We might devote ourselves to the things that light us up: creative passions, genuine friendships, random acts of kindness. We might let go of petty grudges and truly see how short our window is for making a real impact. In that sense, even if we never crack the code of what happens next, we discover something extraordinary about the here and now. Some form of peace can come from accepting the unknown as part of the deal. This isn't to say we should give up the search for answers. Human curiosity is unstoppable, and breakthroughs in science or spiritual inquiry could one day shed more light on the mechanics of consciousness. But for the moment, the not knowing can itself become a guiding force, pushing us to find meaning in every sunrise, every chance encounter, every laugh, every tear. So where does this leave Megan? She still wonders if there's more beyond this life, but she's no longer paralyzed by that uncertainty. Instead, she's allowed it to shape her perspective on what really matters while she's alive. She invests more energy in relationships, in learning, in experiences that expand her world. Paradoxically, she says, contemplating mortality has made her cherish life's fragile beauty even more. Because one day, all of this ends, whether it's a gateway to another existence or a return to the void. Either way, each moment beats with a sense of irreplaceable importance. If you, like Megan, find yourself wrestling with these huge, daunting questions, perhaps the best step is to look at what that curiosity can teach you right now. Reflect on your relationships, on the legacy you hope to leave behind, even if it's just in the memories of the people you touched. Think about the unique gifts, passions, or callings that you've neglected because you assumed you'd have limitless days. That's where transformation lives. That's how facing the final mystery can become a catalyst to enrich the life we're certain of, the one we're living this very second. And if you have theories, religious or philosophical, scientific or esoteric, go ahead and share them. Let's keep this conversation alive. Let's lean into that unknown together. Because in the end, you don't need someone else to give you the answer with a capital A. Sometimes, the greatest gift is recognizing that the question itself shapes us in profound ways, and that maybe, just maybe, what we do with these fleeting years matters in ways we can't fully articulate, but can definitely feel. So ask yourself, what if the biggest secret is that we don't truly know, but in embracing that unknowing, we unlock a brand new appreciation for the life we have? The final twist is that we learn to live each day not with dread, but with mindful gratitude, making peace with the fact that one day we'll cross that boundary, because it might be in acknowledging the limits of our grasp that we discover the boundless potential of our hearts and minds. So let's open up the floor. Go ahead and drop a comment with your take on what you believe or don't believe happens after our time here is done. Share your doubts, your faith, your theories, because in this shared mystery, every perspective has the power to spark a new realization. And maybe, in our collective curiosity, we'll find the understanding that no single perspective could ever reach alone.